Greetings. Dr. Kenneth Niles here on this great day, a day, of course, that we are looking forward to the continual festivities of the season. I know you must have had a great day yesterday, for those of you who viewed on Monday, but for you who are not viewed on Monday, whatever time, I trust that you're ending up your year with a kind of soundness. So that's why I chose for the last couple of broadcasts to be dealing with these two words, mental health. Because this is really a season when people seem to lose the equilibrium with which they may have had earlier in the year. I mean, we have all our situations in terms of school and buying books and family life and the daily run of the day, But coming down to this end of the year, we're all forced with that pressure of tis the season to be jolly. And so I thought it was good for me to just address some mental health issues that are important. Out of last week, we would have looked at the fact that neglect was something that we could have looked at, and no self-care because you got so worked up, you're so busy doing everything that you don't remember yourself and how to take care, how to sleep, how to eat, because you're busy, you can't eat, you can't sleep. It's painting, it's scrubbing, it's planning, it's buying, it's shopping, oh Lord. And we have that, and of course, there is no consistency in terms of how you treat yourself because it's a day-by-day experience. This you're feeling that social rejection or isolation because of the lack we talked about, whether it was because of friends, because of money, because of education causing that. Several attributes that we were looking at. The issue of rejection by friends and by family. Those are issues that come around now, and I thought this is something that you could remember from our last broadcast and things that are important for us as we go forward. I'm hoping to really identify that how we look at this from a human perspective. And I may have mentioned earlier about you identifying with the concept of self and allowing you to know that you own your day and you own your time. But it's important for us to realize that as a human, as a person, I do have a responsibility to care for me first. And bringing me into that space where I can acknowledge who I am and what I am doing and how do I do it. It's the issue of me bringing balance to that cultural and traditional experience that brings a response that is balanced with resilience. So, maybe I use an example here. The issue of me at my first Christmas day, married. I had no ham. I had no turkey. I had a fish. And when I spoke to people about that, it was like, what? But for me and my wife, we were very content with our fish. And we were enjoying because I made it special, baked with a particular kind of sauce. I can't remember the other things because the fish was really important. I have had the example myself of not being able to identify with certain needs because there was at that time the use of the money for something that we consider to be much more important. And that was important for us because we saw the need to classify one, to establish the need, and to bring what we had in terms of money and resources to that specific thing, which did not align with Christmas celebration. And so one has to learn how to work out the culture and the tradition to maintain that sobriety, that balance within you and the family. It's important for you to realize that you are not violating anybody. You're not violating a behavior. You are actually violating you. You're coming against your body, your mind. You're arguing with why I can't and when will I. And then we argue with our family members of lapsing in time and space. You haven't done that yet. When are you going to do it? You wait for the last minute. Oh, Lord. And the tantrums increase and the quarrels increase. And so the mental health issue really increases. in terms of how we are working out those behaviors at that time. So that when we come to this place, are we ready then to interpret a psychological context? Are we willing to say, hey, there is a psychological issue here? Because I am now feeling either too anxious, there's anxiety, or I'm feeling sad, depression, eventually. Or I am feeling so miserable, I can become manic and start quarreling and fighting and throwing things. So that I can become withdrawn and isolate and run away. So that we have to sit down and begin to see what I want represented for me during this jolly time. Or, as I said before in the last broadcast, any time of the year, whether it's Easter, whether it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, how do I appropriate myself in context of how I remain hardy and balanced? How do I overcome these cultural and traditional biases that are continuously forcing me into space that I do not want to live? I do not want that. I would like for it to be better, but that's how it has been. I'm used to this. I never had it any different. Or the other language, we must have this. There is no season without this. I cannot live the day without that. So we put pressure on our very selves. We put pressure on our very minds. And we don't realize that that is encouraging a particular kind of psychological disorder that we are now faced with, that we don't even recognize sometimes. And then, of course, in this season, we can find a dependency in terms of how we cope with alcohol or overeating. You know, and so therefore we have to be careful of how we work it. So that what's really is the thing that we'll have to look for. What is our objective and how do we work out our future? I ended the last broadcast talking about content. And I think when we talk about objective, how do we live as humans, as persons? How do I live within this particular time and space that is deemed by culture or traditions? How do I work out those issues and know that I have to overcome them? I have to work differently in terms of how I am resolving me. How do I find that particular bias? And how do I work it for my good? You know, I'm reminded of the biblical quotation about being conformed, not to this world, but being transformed by the renewal of my mind. Because the conforming sometimes really strangles your future because it affects your present. And so therefore we have to learn how to renew the mind, how to have different confessions in terms of where we are going and how we are working it. We have to relate to that what is present as against what is past. We have to come to this place where we are willing to identify with the realities of tomorrow, not just the realities of the past. And of course, between the past and tomorrow, we have today. What are we doing with that? Am I willing to acknowledge my very present emotional and maybe intellectual positions of how I am looking at myself? And to use the word feeling, how do I work out my feelings? How do I work out my feelings, dash, or comma, desires, needs? How do I do that? What is the desire that I may have as against the need? Is it something that must be for now, or is it something that I can have then? And so it's important for me during any time like this, when culture and traditions press us, we have to see the now versus the then. The need is the now, the desire must be the then. And so that I have to learn that I must work out my now with the context of what I have. How do I bring myself into that space where I am working my now with what I have, and how do I manipulate the resources to satisfy the now. I can maybe plant a seed for tomorrow. I could do something that engages my future. But it's important for me to realize what it is I have need of now, and I can work with content. So therefore, that helps me to appreciate that I am not in a competition with my neighbor, my relatives, my parents, even my past, what I used to have. No, I'm not competing with that. I'm not trying to argue that. I'm not trying to bring that back. I'm going to work with what I have now. And I have spoken to people about this, and they tell me it is difficult, Dr. Niles, to really appreciate the now when there's so much reflection about the past. So the then is really causing chaos. I use that word, but actually for me, I can say it is causing anxiety, much anxiety. How do I frame my now so I could limit, or rather diminish, the anxiety of my tomorrow? How do I work that? How do I decide that I do not want to have that kind of exacerbated, anxious future, working out the frustrations of lack or not being able to, where today I had, and I could have taken maybe some and plant a seed, preparing for my desires, preparing for my then. How do I work out intelligently these transitions into tomorrow? Do I work out myself with a more intellectual context where I can purpose myself to really affirm my tomorrow by how I behave today? It's important for me to even realize that how I work out the wider, bigger picture. I have talked a lot about over the last two podcasts about now, me here. I've also mentioned about politics in terms of the distribution of resources and issue of inflation. But when I look squarely from a world perspective, how do I see myself? I can become a tiny dot, but I'm not a dot. No, well, you're not a dot either. But I have to see that what is affecting me from the outside to that global market, those global advertisements, the media, all the infrastructure that comes to me through economics, through politics, through environment. You understand that? Through social identities. All those complexities are affecting me. But now, when I reach to my own island, how is that filtered in terms of defining what it is I really want? How it is that I can really mass, or rather I should say amass, the strength and the capacity to work out those issues. You must be saying, Dr. Niles, I think I'm getting a little confused here, Okay, let me slow down, because I myself wonder what it is going on here. You see, it's one thing to be affected by your own self. That means in terms of what's around you in what is called the home. Then we have what is called the community, which involves the neighborhood. But then we have the nation, and then we have the region that you made, and then the world. So that there are these stratas that have its own complexities and dimensionalities that creates its own abnormalities where you are. Winter, which we in this part of the world, in the Caribbean, do not have. But that affects in terms of produce, in terms of mail, in terms of transport. How do you work that? If you have to travel from the Caribbean to, let's say, Canada, it all depends on the weather in terms of you leave your country or not. Therefore, you are exacerbating time and losing maybe money. You understand? There may be issues of economics that cannot allow us to have certain fruit or certain commodities because of certain environments. So we have to see how the bigger picture, in terms of the universal context, comes in and we can be stranded. I have to learn to overcome that also. So in coming back this way, it hits my nation. My nation has to establish its own GDP and how we work it economically, how we interpret those financially, and how does the public have to fare the changes in prices, whether they go up, seldom go down. How do we do that? So therefore, again, content is important. Am I able to meet the desires of my future or the very needs of my present? When I come into my village, we are all rallying with a celebration, but yet it's about who have and have not, who has more and who have less, who is upper and who is lower. We still find these class differentials that continue to press us into behaviors. So I have to overcome that. I have to know who the Joneses are. It's a saying that we have in this part of the Caribbean, as against who the poor one is. Because the Joneses will flirt with all what they have. You know, we have all the money, our drinks, and we have parties, and we are here trying to get some tea with a little sugar. But can we therefore find that kind of integration within our communities that everybody will have? Are we able to support, as it were, coming again from that scripture, one of another, supporting each other's venture and carrying through with such gusto, with such joy, satisfying through the community oneself? When it comes to my family, again, we want to share. But the last time I brought what you bring it now, you always don't have. What happened to you? You should be educated. So we are being judged. We are being marginalized. And therefore, there is that context again of me pushing back. By the time it reaches to my house, I can't satisfy my tomorrow. More so, could I satisfy my now? So therefore, I can be very depressed. Or I can come into that place where I'm so anxious or withdrawn or isolated that I can't even function to reach out of my window to say, hi, have a good day. So we need to see how that works and how we therefore can push back from home to the community, to the nation, to the world. How can I? I could learn that contentment in whom I am and work that out peaceably and beautifully, establishing my tomorrow and establishing the realities of where I am going. It's important for me to work out the concept of participation. When I look at myself, my head, my neck, my arms, my body, each limb, each member participates with another to enjoy the fullness of movement, the gratification, the working out of oneself, of how one goes out and on, living satisfactorily to enjoy today. Whatever befalls you now, you know it's going to affect you then. So we want to understand that your needs now must be that which will strengthen you, which will fortify you, which will refresh you and cause you to find a particular strength and posture to deal with it then. 2023 cometh. And you will be wondering, what if it's been so hard 2022? What then? Oh no, I can't handle that. Oh Lord, what's going on? Tell me. I am not here to be a doomsday, and I hope I have not given that impression. But I hope I've been able, through using those two words, mental health, to help us to see, having gone through, let's say, the COVID 2020 to 2022, and the post-COVID, what we're in now, in this arena of rehabilitation and rebuilding and restoration, it's important for us as we hit the end of the year with that kind of season where we ought to have all things jolly and we are still pressed. Please, no, we have to learn to have that contentment and work that strength from within, without. So, I'm encouraging us to define a proper balance for our tomorrow. I'm encouraging us to go forward with a new concept of, hey, I am not going to have desires for then, but I'm going to see how best I can work my now. So, tomorrow's realities depend on today's experiences. So, let's make today's experiences worthwhile. Let's make today's experiences jolly. Let's make, the experiences of today worth much more than we ever could think. And if you can establish yourself, maybe sitting down on this stool with me and having a conversation and saying, yes, Dr. Niles, I understand what you're saying. I'm glad to hear that you're sharing this, because I know I wasn't seemingly thinking that I would have had a good end of year, and I don't know what's going to happen next year, but I am realizing that I make my tomorrow because of how I handle my today. May this day that you have be bright, yes. May this day be jolly, and may this day be full of fun. May tomorrow, and that tomorrow is maybe next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months, but that is still a tomorrow in your future. And let's continue to establish God is in the midst. I can't end without letting you know, but I believe that God is in the midst, God is in your midst, God is in my midst, and He's there to work out all things well. But of course, of course, we have to work with Him as we renew our minds to come into that place of content. Let's support one another. Let's move forward out of our house, into the community, into our nation, and be productive citizens that continues to establish tomorrow's greatness and prosperity that we will all enjoy now and forever. Amen. Amen. Grace be multiplied to you, and see you at our next podcast.